Hey everyone, James Lynch here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the best UFC fighters from the Caucasus regions. This is an idea that was given to me by one of my viewers, Izzy. And it gets a little complicated because obviously there's certain fighters, you got to see where they're from, whether they fit the criteria of the Caucasus region. I just got this Wikipedia page up here. But shout out to a few people on my Discord who know this a little bit better than I do as far as where certain fighters are from. So right off the bat, before we get into this video, I wanted to go over the criteria of how I came up with these rankings. So first and foremost, these are only ranked UFC fighters. So no fighters from Bellator or PFL. Wanted to keep things simple. These are also fighters that are just ranked in the UFC. So if they're unranked, they're not going to be in this video. Again, just making things a little bit easier. And also we had to be very strict about where they're from exactly. Are they in the Caucasus region or not? So certain fighters like Shavkat Rakhmonov, Rafael Fiziev, Asu, Bogdan, Pyotr Yan, and Alexander Volkov. My understanding is they aren't part of the Caucasus region, so they will not be featured in this video. Also, someone like Ikram Aliskerov or Abus Magomedov will not be in this video either, even though they are from the Caucasus region. They aren't ranked, so I wanted to just stick with ranked opponents. And it goes without saying, someone like Muhammad Mokaev, he's not in the UFC anymore. He's now fighting for Brave, so he isn't going to be featured in this video as well. But I wanted to go over the list of who I have that made the cut, and then we're going to do my rankings right now. Starting with heavyweight, we have Shamil Gaziev, Sergey Pavlovich. Light heavyweight, we have Magomed Ankalaev and Azamat Murzakanov. At middleweight, we have a bunch here: Hamzat Chimaev, Nasruddin Imavov, Roman Dolidze, because remember Georgia is part of the Caucasus region as well, and Shara Bullet. We also have lightweight Islam Makhachev, Arman Saryukin. We have Ilya Topuria, Movsar Ivoyev, and Giga Chikadze, I should say, at featherweight. At bantamweight, we have Murad Dvalishvili, Umar Nurmagomedov, Pyotr Yan, and then at flyweight, we have Tagir Ulanbekov. So we ended up with 16 fighters total. Again, this is all up for debate, but I think the easiest thing to do is just to stick to these names, and then we'll sort of rank them bit by bit. So we're going to start from 16 on up, and the first fighter who's going to be in the 16th spot is going to be Shamil Gaziev. Not a great performance against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He is coming off a win over Don'Tale Mayes, which was good for him, and his overall UFC record is not too bad. I think he's he's 2-1 in the UFC. We just haven't seen a lot of him, and I don't really know at this point where he sort of fits, but compared to some of the other fighters on this list, currently 34 years old, which for heavyweight isn't that old. So he's going to get the number 16 spot in this spot. Okay, next spot is going to go to Shara Bullet. Where is he here? Right there. So he will go in this spot at number 15. And mainly it's because, he's just got the one good win there over Armen Petrosyan in his last fight. He looked great in that one, but, again, still need to see a little bit more. There's some questions about his wrestling. He's won all of his fights in the UFC so far, but hasn't really done so, amazingly. Again, the last one was a step in the right direction, beating Armen Petrosyan, but I want to see a little bit more before we start ranking him a little bit higher. Keeping things moving, we're going to go with Tagir Ulanbekov in our next spot here. And with Tagir, basically same sort of thing. We haven't seen a ton from him right now. He is 33 years old, so he's getting up there a little bit in age. Hasn't fought since the Cody Durden fight back in 2023. He's had some tough luck. Obviously, fights with Alex Perez and Joshua Van have not really panned out here, but he is a finisher. Finished Durden by submission, finished Nate Maness by submission. Nate Maness was 14-2 at the time. Has that loss to Tim Elliott in between there. But again, same sort of thing. Want to see a little bit more from him, but 9 wins by submission. Certainly a talented fighter from the Caucasus region. He's actually from Dagestan. Okay, next fighter we have on the list here is Giga Chikadze at featherweight, which is right there. We'll put him there. So he, again, has not fought that much. And I think one of the things people forget about Chikadze is he's 36 years old. So he's getting up there in age. I wouldn't really put him as one of the most talented fighters here. If you look at his losses, he's lost to Arnold Allen and Calvin Kattar in the UFC. Those are two ranked opponents, two pretty good fighters. The Kattar fight was really one where he could have broke through because he was coming off that really good win over Edson Barbosa prior to that. So Chikadze is going to come in at spot number 13. Because again, I think I would argue he's a bit on the decline at this point. He's not really a contender, sort of just floating somewhere in the middle there. Okay, coming in at number 12 is going to be Azamat Murzakanov. He comes in at number 12. And I think the thing with him is, again, a bit older here, 35. I think we forget about that. He's undefeated. I'll give him that. That may put him higher on some people's lists, but it's just the opposition. He hasn't really fought a lot of great opponents in the UFC, and we haven't seen a whole lot. He's got 10 wins by knockout. Was supposed to fight Nikita Krylov. That was a fight that, had he won that, he would certainly be higher on this list. I think there's still some questions about him. Good win over Alonzo Menafield in this last fight. Defeated Dustin Jacoby as well, but just hasn't had that, really good ranked opponent win yet. So got him coming in at number 12. Coming in at number 11, guy I like watching fight, Roman Dolidze. And same sort of thing. Dolidze is a little bit older here. He's coming in at 36 years old as well. Couple nice wins over Anthony Smith and Kevin Holland. He's another guy that, I think could make some noise in the middleweight division. He's had a few setbacks, lost to Nasruddin Imavov. Pretty close fight there, majority decision loss. And then he lost to Marvin Vettori. And I think if you can't beat a Marvin Vettori, you're not really in that contender spot. Now, you can certainly turn it around, but, being 36 in a division that's fairly deep, I don't know if we'll ever see Roman fight for a title or be in that contender spot, but he's certainly very well-rounded. We've seen him win by knockout or submission as well. He's, certainly a guy that goes out there to finish. So certainly, good fighter, but doesn't crack the top 10 of my list that I have right here. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Sergey Pavlovich. Now, I know some people think he's a bit overrated and all these different things, but, because he lost to Alexander Volkov in his last fight. But if you look at his two of his losses in the UFC are against two top guys in Alexander Volkov and Tom Aspinall at the time we're recording this. Alexander Volkov going to be rematching Cyril Gane. I'm actually picking him in that fight. I think he's going to win that. And then, he lost to Aspinall in the first round, but you look at it there, he's got wins over, Curtis Blades, knocked out Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis. He's one of the most devastating strikers in that weight class and had that, bad debut against Overeem back in 2018 where he lost, but then went on a pretty good win streak after that prior to fighting Tom Aspinall. So I think with Pavlovich, there's still some potential there. 32 years old, which for the heavyweight division is very young in my opinion, and he's someone as well that I think could certainly move up on this list if he bounces back in his next fight, which at the moment he's fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I do think he'll win that fight, and I think he can move up even higher on this list. Okay, let's keep things moving here. Movsar Evloev. Now this one might be kind of low for people, because again, Evloev undefeated. I think what put him a bit lower than some of the other fighters on this list is, oh no, you know what? I skipped someone. My bad. Evloev's actually after this next fighter. The next fighter I actually have is Nasruddin Imavov. Okay, so my thinking here with Imavov is, he's looked good. He's had a few setbacks in the UFC, right? He lost to Phil Hawes, which is a fight he really should have won. Not exactly a loss that has aged too well. Does have a couple nice wins over, Joaquin Buckley and Roman Dolidze. Jared Cannonier and Brendan Allen were very good wins. Lost to Sean Strickland. That was short notice and in a different weight class. I think the potential for Dolidze for Imavov, I should say, is certainly there. I think he will rise up the ranks a little bit more as if he continues things on. I mean, we're hearing that he's going to be fighting Israel Adesanya. I mean, if he wins that, he will absolutely skyrocket on this list. I think the potential's there for sure, and not too old, right? He's 28 years old. Not old at all. Actually, he's very young. So I think there's a lot of potential with Imavov. The issue is that he's got a couple losses in the UFC, had a couple losses prior to getting in the UFC as well. And I'd say he's not a guy that's really going out there and finishing a lot of his opponents. Now, he's fighting some good opposition, like Brendan Allen's tough to finish. Dolidze's tough to finish. If he was finishing more of these guys, I'd feel better about putting him higher on this list. But right now, we're going to have Roman Dolidze, I keep saying Dolidze. I don't know why. Kind of looks like him a little bit. But yeah, Imavov coming in at number 9. And by the way, I know there'll be some people being like, what are you doing? Imavov is from France. He was born in Dagestan, so that's why he makes the cut. Now, I kind of spoiled it already. Coming in at number 8 is Movsar Evloev. And Evloev is a guy I know people would probably want to have higher on this list. I do think he beats Aljamain Sterling next week at UFC 310. He's 18-0. The issue here is lack of finishes, and even if you look at his last fight against Arnold Allen, that was a pretty close fight, right? So if he had a more dominant performance, I might be inclined to put him a little bit higher. I think the big issue here is that he's not finishing opponents, and it's not like he's fighting guys, if you look at some of the opposition that he's fought, it's not like he's fighting certain guys that can't be finished. Like a Nick Lentz, he should have finished. A Mike Grundy, he should have finished. A Hakeem Dawodu, he should have finished. I'll give him a break with Dan Ige. Dan Ige is still yet to be finished in the UFC. Diego Lopez was a short notice fight. It's just tough to say. I think it's a combination of lack of opposition and just him not finishing that much, which is why I have him a little bit lower on this list than some people would like, having him coming in at number 8. So listen, he goes out there and finishes Aljamain Sterling. He could certainly rise up on this list, but right now I have Movsar Evloev at number 8. Okay, another one that people might think is a little too low here, Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going to have him in the number 7 spot. At the time of recording this, it's not official. It should be official here soon, you would hope. But him and Islam Makhachev is going to be the next fight. And Arman's done great. I mean, he's got a win over Charles Oliveira in his last fight, knocked out Beneil Dariush. His last loss, well, other than Gamrot, his last loss was the loss to Islam in that short notice fight. And he actually went the distance with Islam. The thing with Arman as well is there's a lot of potential with him too, right? Like, even if he goes and loses against Islam Makhachev, I think there's still potential for him to stick around in the division a little bit longer. He's 28 years old, another one of the guys that's a bit younger on this list, and extremely well-rounded. 9 wins by knockout, 5 by submission, fought some pretty good opponents along the way, including Oliveira Dariush. Demiris Magulov was a ranked opponent at one point. Joel Alvarez finished him in the second round. I thought he beat Gamrot, you know what I mean? So in general, I like Arman a lot, one of my favorite fighters to watch, and that's why I've got him currently in the number 7 spot. Okay, number 6, I've got Magomed Ankalaev. And again, people might have him higher on this list, but what it comes down to me for Ankalaev is a lot of bad luck, right? Like, he hasn't been given that title shot against Alex Pereira. I do think there's a possibility of him beating Alex Pereira at this point. You look at his last fight against Alexander Rakic. That was a fight where, had he finished him, I think he'd be a bit higher on this list, but it was it was a decisive win for him. But I also think that, when it comes to fighting, some better opponents, we would like to see some finishes there. Did finish Johnny Walker, had a split draw with Jan Blachowicz in a fight where he was injured partway through. And then he did finish Anthony Smith. I'll give him that. Prior to that, Anthony Smith had not been finished a ton at light heavyweight. But then if you even look at a fight like Thiago Santos, couldn't finish him as well. Santos has been finished since then. So Ankalaev, could next year become the light heavyweight champion. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But right now, he's not a champion, and he's currently in limbo right now. And, again, like I would like more dominant performances from him. So that's why I have him currently ranked number 6. Okay, coming in at number 5, and this may shock some people where I have him on this list, but I'm going to explain why in a second here. But I've got Merab Dvalishvili coming in the number 5 spot. I know people would want him higher. He's the current bantamweight champion, and he's had a very tough road to get that title. If you look at who he's gone into the octagon with, wins over Henry Cejudo. He obviously knocked out Sean O'Malley to win the title. He obviously fought as well. I'm just looking at the resume here. Jose Aldo's a great win. Marlon Moraes in a fight where he ran into some trouble and got it done. I mean, he's had a long road to get to the title. He gets the title now, but that's part of the problem. I would like to see a little bit more. And the thing with Merab is not a lot of finishes either. That's kind of the knock on Ivoyev as well. Ivoyev, not a ton of finishes. Merab, same sort of thing here. He's, if he finishes as Sean O'Malley, maybe he's a little bit higher on this list. And so that's why currently I have Merab ranked a little bit lower, but still very dominant in a lot of his wins. He's looked very impressive. Merab making number 5. Okay, number 4 on this list, and I talked about how I value a lot of finishes and everything else, is going to be Khamzat Chimaev. Now, again, I'd have Chimaev on this list a little bit higher. I still think there's some questions about Chimaev, if he can go 5 rounds or not. We haven't seen that because he ripped off Robert Whittaker's head in his last fight, and obviously that's going to get him into title contention. So Chimaev just has that, that aura of being sort of a boogeyman, someone that nobody wants to fight. He's very, very, very talented. Looks like he, I think, it's only a matter of time before he's going to fight for the title. And I think there's a good chance he will be champion as well. So for me, Khamzat Chimaev, scary guy. He's coming in at number 4. And I have him on the list, coming in at number 4 right there. And I think he's going to do, great things in 2025, as long as he can be active and do quite well as well. Okay, next fighter. We're going to add to this list as we're counting down now our top 3 is Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, people are going to be, I can already see people in the comments, people freaking out being like, why do you have Umar ahead of Merab? Well, here's why. I think if Umar and Merab fought right now, I think Umar wins. I think his striking is a bit better, and I think he won't have to worry about the pace and the wrestling and the grappling of Merab. I think Umar wins that. So we had some debate about this on my Discord, whether Merab should be ahead of Umar. If you're going off just strictly resume, Merab would be ahead, and he's also the current champion. But I also have a hard time putting Umar behind Merab if I think he can actually beat him. So I think Umar's the real deal. I think he proved that in the Corey Sandhagen fight. I could see him being champion and beating Merab. And I also don't think that there's anyone right now at bantamweight right now that I think can beat Umar right now. So to me, he's kind of in some ways the boogeyman in this division. Nobody wants to fight him. I have him at number 3, and a lot of this as well is based off potential. And the question I had about him going into the Sandhagen fight was the 5-round cardio. He's got that. So that's also why I have him ahead of Khamzat Chimaev, because I don't know if Chimaev can go 5 rounds. I know Umar can. And granted, Chimaev's, the reason he hasn't gone 5 rounds because he keeps finishing these opponents. So that's why I have Umar ahead of Chimaev, just because we've seen a little bit more. And, you can honestly swap them back and forth. Like if you want to put Chimaev ahead of Umar, I don't have a problem with that either. But yeah, Umar, a little bit younger as well, I think. Let me just double check. Umar is, how old is Umar right now? Let me just quickly check this out. So Umar right now is 28 years old. I believe Chimaev's a bit older. So that's another reason to maybe give him the edge because Chimaev is 30. So again, that's another reason why I think Umar's there. Okay, we're going to get to our top two. I don't think these are surprising too many people, and these are the two guys that are on the thumbnail. I'm going to go at number two. I'm going to go Ilia Topuria. Now look, I could see people putting Topuria as number one. He got two incredible wins. He knocks out Volkanovski. He knocks out Max Holloway. It's pretty hard to have better wins than that. And I'll just say this right now for, spoiler alert, I'm going to have a video coming out on this later. He's my fighter of the year. I mean, who had a bigger year than Ilia Topuria with what he was able to do? He is becoming a superstar in the UFC, no doubt about it. Exciting fight style. The thing though is, with him is that he hasn't fought like a ton of competition as opposed to Islam. I'd say Islam's fought a few better guys overall. I know people will say, Volk and Max are better than whatever Poirier and Volk. I mean, they both fought Volk, right? And they both finished Volk. The first fight with Volk and Islam was closer. Maybe you give the edge to Topuria that way. I don't know. And I believe as far as age goes, I just want to double check this. Topuria, I believe, is younger than Islam. So that also could maybe give him the edge over Islam, but I'll explain why Islam's getting the number one spot. Obviously not a spoiler alert. So yeah, Topuria is 27. Islam is... Let me just double check here. Sorry, guys. Should have had this ready to go. There we go. Islam Makhachev. Yeah, Islam is 33. So he's a little bit older. But the thing is, Islam has been in the UFC a little bit longer. He's fought some better opposition. I know this is going to be like a nitpicking point, but I still can't get the Jai Herbert fight out of my mind where, Topuria was almost finished in that fight. And I know Islam's lost, but, 9 times out of 10, not to use the Michael Chandler quote here, but, Islam would beat Adriano Martins, like no questions asked if they had a rematch. I don't think there's any question about that. And overall, Islam's just looked very dominant. I think the one thing that I look at with Islam is, he beats a prime Charles Oliveira and he just dominates him. Like that fight was not even close. So that's sort of where I give Islam the slight edge over Topuria there. And he is going to come in at my number one ranked Caucasus fighter. He's got the 2 wins over Volk. He's got the win over Poirier, which looks good. He's got the win over Oliveira. And then, finishing Dan Hooker. That's aged quite well considering what Hooker's done. Again, these are very close. Like, I don't have an issue if people want to go Topuria number 1, Islam number 2. To me, though, Islam has looked unstoppable. I don't think anyone's going to beat him at lightweight right now, and that includes Arman Tsarukyan if that fight does end up getting booked. But yeah, that's sort of who I'm going with right now is Islam at number 1. So quickly go over the list one more time, just in case you're paying attention at home here. I've got Islam at number 1, Topuria at number 2, Umar at number 3, Chimaev at number 4, Merab at number 5, 6, Magomed Ankalaev, 7, Arman Tsarukyan, 8, Movsar Evloev, 9, Nasruddin Imavov, 10, Sergey Pavlovich, 11, Roman Dolidze, 12, Azamat Murzakanov, 13 is Chikaze, 14 is Tagir, 15 is Sharabulit, and 16 is Shamil Gaziev, which I know Lucas Tracy will like. The placement of Gaziev on this card as well. So that's kind of where we're going here. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know how you have your rankings. That I think would be a lot better. If you want to argue specifics or whatever, I'm totally fine with that. The one thing I don't want you guys to do is argue with me about who's from the Caucasus or who isn't, because there's going to be a lot of debate about that. If there is someone who you think shouldn't be on this list or should, let me know. I did try and talk to a bunch of different people. And again, I wanted to just keep it strictly to the Caucasus because then we're just gonna have too many fighters, and you start really nitpicking if we don't use ranked opponents and all that stuff. I figure that's just an easier criteria. So let me know in the comments what your top fighters are, maybe even just your top 5, and we can have a fun debate with that in the comments. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.